Good.
He's not just a coach; he's a mentor. And he's got every other record, so it's like
this should be a team to contend for a PSAC title. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
If I told you that the number 19 team in the country right now is going to eventually be in the top 10, the top 5, and make a playoff run, you wouldn't be surprised if I told you that was going to be the University of Wisconsin River Falls.
Hello, welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. Tonight is January 28th, the night of D1R 210. I'll tell you right now, first thing off rip, this is one of the best episodes we've had in a long time. I am excited about it. This is entertaining, informative. It hits all the right spots. We got D3, D2, NAIA, all of it tonight. A great guest joining me here soon. Sean McTaggart, the quarterback from East Stroudsburg, will join me. It's great timing because tonight we're talking all about the PSAC, the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, one of the best in Division II with some of the most depth. They had 4 playoff teams a year ago just out of this conference alone. We will talk all about the PSAC, the 2025 preview of the D2 level. We also bring on 2 guys to review the D3 football preseason top 25 rankings tonight, the full comprehensive ranking from D3football.com. We give a ton of takes, talk about a ton of different teams. Definitely tune in for that part of the conversation. We've got 2 Division II products signing to pro teams, one of them in the NFL, the Detroit Lions, one of them in the CFL with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Both of them really exciting opportunities. Finally, close out the episode with some of the top NAIA running backs in 2025. And like I said, this is an exciting one. As I'm recording this bit, it's already past midnight. This has been a long night of recording, but you can tell I still have energy. I still have the excitement for this episode. I really hope you guys enjoy this. Big shout out to our friends over at the Prowler, the recruiting service. Shout out for sending over the t-shirt. Got a Prowler up with them if you're looking to take the next step in the recruiting game. But before we get these things going, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. Timestamps at the bottom, that little red bar, or in the description of whatever platform you're listening on. Follow us on the socials. Do not forget to subscribe. So many good things happening for the podcast. Thankful for everyone who is a part of this and everyone like yourselves who supports it. So, for D1 Rejects, let's get this thing started. Joining the show tonight, signal caller for the Warriors at East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania, a guy from the PSAC we're talking a lot about tonight. Why not hear it right from the source? The guy threw for more than 2,500 yards a year ago. He's poised to repeat. It's Sean McTaggart. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Excited to get you on the show. No better time than to get a Warrior on here. I have to go back and affirm, because we've done a lot of episodes. I think you're the first ESU guy on the show. I would not have anyone else. You feel like the perfect guy and the perfect fit to talk about this program, my man.
No, that's awesome, man. It's this program's historical at the Division II level, and when I got there, it wasn't that case. We were kind of in the upside down, and last couple of years we've kind of put the pieces together, and I've won some games.
In the upside down, is that a little Stranger Things reference, or what we got going on there?
No, it's kind of a thing our coach Terwilliger uses. Like when things aren't going well, it's like you're in the upside down. It's not going your way. How are you going to get out of it?
And we know all about what you do in between the white lines on Saturdays. Your quarterbacking for the Warriors has been exemplary, to use maybe one adjective there. But let's talk about how they got you boys working in the virtual reality down there in PA. I saw a clip with the VR headset. Tell me about how that works into the training regimen, what that does for you guys, because it looks hilarious, but I'm sure if there wasn't a benefit, you guys wouldn't be doing it. So walk me through that. It looks awesome.
No, it is awesome. So Coach Terwilliger, obviously ESU quarterback, his father, ESU quarterback, both my coaches. And one thing Coach Swig really takes into consideration when he's recruiting is we want the right guy behind center. And the one tool that we've been using is the virtual reality. So during practice, I wear a GoPro on my helmet, and it records 7-on-7 team. Sometimes you can use it for blitz pickup period, just kind of see where the fronts are, who's what are you going to see on Saturday, who's blitzing, who's not, so, and then we download it to the reps, and every quarterback at East Stroudsburg has their own. We all have our own virtual reality system, and we can all go back after practice, watch film, kind of see it from the quarterback's eye. I let the receivers use it, kind of see what I'm seeing, how to work zones and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a great tool. Still learning it. There's always we're learning on ways to like use it better, not maybe just for team and 7-on-7, but like ways we can use it to help us on Saturdays, not necessarily for practice.
Yep. 100%. I love that. I love the fact that it's personalized for you guys. You get the GoPro out there and you're taking real footage and feeding that into this system.
Yeah. No, it's straight from my helmet.
That is sick, dude. Was that an easy sell for you guys to buy into that right away, or did it take 1 or 2 tries to maybe see the value in something like that?
So our coach he bought one and was kind of like working with us, with it. And one of the old quarterbacks, Aaron Tobias, used it. And then like we all kind of started using it. We all started. So then he just bought one for every quarterback 2 years ago.
That's sick.
Yeah, man. It's if it's used correctly, it's a game changer. I really believe that.
Yeah, you talk about this program, right? You talk about maybe the ups and downs, East Stroudsburg, and in very recent history. And right now, I think it's safe to say this is an up, right? You talk about the great time to be a player, any type of way associated with this program as a fan or otherwise. The most all-conference selections since 1968 this last year, man. That's a number and a stat that stands out right away. Back-to-back NCAA playoff bursts for only the second time in program history that you guys have been able to accomplish that, which is absolutely incredible. All of that said, though, how do you and the boys feel down there that you're able to build on this momentum? Is there a feeling that this team maybe hasn't even reached your respective ceiling yet?
I always kind of, we're still climbing. I think the last 2023, we went 9-2, got a chance in the playoffs. It was the first time for anybody on that team to even be in a situation like that. And the game just did not go our way. It was not, we didn't get off the bus. We didn't play the way we thought we were going to. And, it was a tough way to end the season. And then, last year, I mean, we were hot, man. We won like 7 or 8 games in a row. We only lost 1 game in the regular season. It was, a nail biter, went down to the last drive. And I think the team's mentality this year is, act like you've been there before. And you got to take everything a week at a time. And I think the guys that are coming back this year, we have a lot of offensive linemen coming back. We got a lot of receivers coming back offensively, so I think the same mentality going into this year is, take everything a week at a time, act like you've been there before. I think we got the maturity and we got the athleticism to, win some playoff games and make a run this year. I really do believe that.
Something I wanted to talk about with you, your head coach, you mentioned him earlier, obviously a guy that has been very well-versed in this program and this conference. You broke his record for completion percentage. That's got to be a really cool deal. Are you hanging that one over his head going into fall camp this year or what?
No. He reminded me, he told me that after the season last year.
Okay.
And, I look up to him, man. Like, he's
good.
He's not just a coach, he's a mentor. And he's got every other record. So it's like, if I got one on him, I might talk some to him, but no, he's everything you want to coach. The whole team respects him. He gets the most out of you. And that's one thing that you don't really realize when you're a freshman, sophomore, but he really cares about the players. He cares about East Stroudsburg. I think he just gets everybody on the team to buy in, and that's what's kind of happened over the last couple of years. He's gotten, he doesn't necessarily take people from the portal, it looks like. We don't have few, if many, guys that didn't come to East Stroudsburg out of high school. So he's all about family, all about building from the ground up,
That's big time. And on top of all of those really nice and that glowing review you just gave, the dude was a dog when he played, right? You look back at when he was slinging the rock for this Warriors team, he's still all-time Division II passing yards. He's top 5 in the history of D2 football. You look at a stat like that and combine that with all the things in the glowing review that you just gave. What is it like to learn from this guy when it comes to the X's and O's of football, who's had that level of experience and expertise and now, of course, is on the back end of that coaching, the next generation yourself?
No, you can't ask for much more, from the quarterback position. And, his dad was his offensive coordinator, quarterback coach there too, and he's still coaching. His dad's coming up on year he's the quarterback coach. You know, he's been there for 50 years. So the two guys that have really, you know, helped me and, you know, led me into the position I am today is like, you can't ask for much more like mentorship from those two, you know, and to have
100%.
like a father-son coach doing that, it's like you really feel like a family atmosphere.
I like that. I like that. And something that, you know, for you, I guess personally coming into this, my understanding is you had a pretty substantial knee injury before your career even got started at ESU. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know, started as a sophomore in high school. First game my junior year, you know, we're up 5 scores. I was coming out, start the second half. I was actually on kick return.
Okay.
And
Special
it was
teams.
the first, yeah, it was the first game my freshman year, and I was in, you know, the back row catching kicks and caught the kick, made a cut. You know, I got tripped up and I tore my ACL, my LCL, my MCL, my PCL,
Yep.
and a nerve. So that kind of shot my junior year down, like recruiting wise, everything was wiped away. And then my senior was
Yep.
COVID. So high school didn't go, you know, as planned. You know, had a solid.
Hey, you're part of an
year,
elite club, though, brother. As a 3-time ACL guy myself, you are part of an elite club, man. And you maybe you didn't ask for admission, right? Maybe you didn't ask for admission into this club, but it's a prestigious one.
You know, I feel more connected to guys that have been through that, so
right.
It's not fun. 3 times,
absolutely.
That's not.
Absolutely, man. I wanted to ask, too, like, because you talked about that, the recruiting process obviously takes a hit for you, and it just impacts the way in which you get into college football. What did that do for you? Maybe not as a football player, but as your maturation as a player and as a man heading into college, going through an experience like that, thankfully most kids and athletes don't have to go through, especially at the high school level. You have something like that under your belt before you even get to college. How does that change the way you approach recovery and you approach your strength and conditioning and, of course, maturing on and off the field, something like that going through that is a difficult task?
You know, that's honestly the first time I've been asked that, and you know, that's probably that year of my life I learned the most. I feel like in any year, just about like, you know, how to handle
100%.
things. You know, up until that point, I really haven't faced any adversity, and you know, with that injury, you know, missing my, you know, prime time recruiting, and then COVID happens. I don't even know if I'm going to get a senior year.
Yep.
So I was just looking at it as like, oh, wow, I might not even get the chance to play college. Like, if I get the chance to play high school football one more time, I'm going to take full advantage of it. And that's kind of what my mentality was: just control what you can control. You know, if that time comes, you're going to be ready for it. And ever since then, you know, I've just kind of taken off with it. You know, didn't play the first 2 years in college. And then, you know, when the opportunity came, I've tried to take the most advantage of it as possible.
Yep. And you don't give it back, man. You get that opportunity. You don't give that thing back. You go in and you earn it. You've done that when it comes to playing on the field. You've also made a big impact off of it. Earlier this month, nominated for the All-State AFCA Good Works team. One of less than 200 nominated across the country. First of all, kudos to you, my friend. That is an incredible feat. I'm really excited for you and the entire squad down there that gets to celebrate you. How are you involved in that community off the field? What has pushed you to commit yourself to those areas as a student athlete, man?
You know, we have community service pretty much year round, whether it's, you know, Mondays during the fall, you know, at least once a week. There's always something you can do. And, you know, it kind of comes again from my coach. He's always trying to give back to people, the community. You know, so we do, you know, we pick up trash around town. We, you know, help churches, homeless people. We, you know, Salvation Army during Christmas time. Like, there's countless things we're doing. And that's not just me. That's the whole team.
Hell yeah.
There's always guys helping out. And that's kind of what, to me, like, giving back. And one thing that I've kind of learned is, like, someone's always watching what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you don't want to give someone a reason, you know, any negative feedback or any negative impact. So I try to do the best I can to give back, to help people who are less fortunate. And, you know, to be recognized for that, you know, it's an honor. It's cool. something I didn't expect. It kind of just happened, and
Yeah.
I'm honored for it.
100%, man. We hope that obviously that takes the next step and you continue down that path. And that's something special too. You talk about having a coach that's involved and encourages that is a really important thing. And not everyone has that, obviously. But where it becomes really special is when guys like you, guys like the other leaders on this team, they pick up the reins and they become kind of the ambassadors for those kind of projects. They become, the leaders in that kind of way as well, which obviously seems to be the case for you guys. But let's talk about this 2025 squad in terms of on the field. You lose two big pieces of that running back room. That's a really tough ask for the offensive backfield moving forward. What can we expect and who can we expect to step up in that room for this offense? That's going to be a focal point for you guys.
Yeah, we had two absolute studs last couple years, run the ball. If you look at our offense last year, it was split down the middle. I think it was literally 26 passing, 26 rushing. Like, we were very balanced, adjust during games, And so this year we got Deontay Crawford stepping up, playing some running back, and Matt Frame, who plays some like up back, fullback, but he's definitely going to get some touches. I think we're going to be throwing the ball a good amount. I think we got, the athletes in the offensive line. Everyone's mature. There's guys who are like ready to play, but we had seniors last year.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what some of these younger guys can do. So I think this 2025 offensively is going to be, my goal is to be just where we were the best offense in the conference. We were the number one offense last year, and I think we have what it takes to do it again. I think there's a lot that needs to be done, the next month. Like, camp starts next week. So, I'm just excited, man. I'm ready to get back into it.
As you should be, my friend. The hay is in the barn, as they like to say. Let's talk about those big guys up front, that starting five. They led the conference in the stat that I would like to say in keeping the jersey clean on the man under center, that being yourself, of course, sacks allowed. Only 8 times last year was that jersey down at, I'd say, the mud. We all know you're probably playing on some artificial turf down there. We'll leave it as is. But talk about that front five, that group. How do they stay intact as a unit coming into this year, and what kind of leadership does that bring to this offensive unit?
We lost, probably the biggest leader offensively last year is Ray Christus, who was a center. He's one of the best to ever do it. We got Drew Fatusin at left tackle, Hunter Soybert at left guard, Nico Ippolito at center right now. And then we got, Guy Gilliard playing right tackle and Pat Reynolds playing right guard. So we have 4 guys that all started last year.
Love that. Love to hear that.
We got a mature team. We had 2 younger guys on the left side step up early on in the season last year, and they kind of just ran with it. They 8 sacks all season. Like, that's insane. That is the reason why our offense produce. Because if you can pass block and run block, and you got guys around you, and it's good chemistry, it's what do you defend? You put 8 in the box. You put 8 in the secondary. Like, what are you supposed to do about that? So it all starts up front. Got to keep everybody healthy. They're ready to get after it. I talked to all those guys. It's 4 days away. We're ready, man. It's getting to that time. The offensive line, I'm sure, is hungry.
Hell yeah.
So we're ready.
Yeah, they're going to be going full go in just helmets. You know how those guys get in the trenches, man. You get in the first 2 days of camp, and it's like you don't even have shoulder pads on. We're over there ripping and doing one-on-one drills with the big boys.
No, yeah, they're nuts, dude. They'll do anything to keep the quarterback clean. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
Not just as a quarterback, running back. They're blocked not just for me. They're blocked for everybody.
Everyone's got to pitch in that area for sure. And to close it out, man, tell me about this defense, right? This unit that only allowed 160 pass yards per game last year. That was good for the best in the PSAC. That's a really important number, especially when you pair it with the potent offense through the air that you guys have been able to accomplish. Where are there some opportunities for guys to step up into bigger roles there? What do we need to know about that side of the ball heading into 2025, man?
When you talk about the pass defense, we got Everett Dingle, Mally Bowman. Got some young guys that are going to have to step up this year that probably didn't play as much last year just because, we had some older guys in. But we always try to tell our defense, we don't want you guys covering for more than 2 seconds, 3 seconds,
Yep.
because that's when the ball's coming out. And that, our defensive line, our front seven, we like to get after you. We like to blitz. We like speed off the edge, so it's a very aggressive style of defense. And it's the goal of it, from practicing against them so much is, they try, and that's kind of how teams, become good is, our defense is every practice putting our offense in the worst possible situation to make the offense better, how to adjust, so practicing up against those guys every day is not only making the defense better, it's making the offense better too.
Yeah, love that. You come to play the Warriors 25. You're going to be ready for all 3 phases. Let's keep you the hell away from special teams, though, huh?
Yeah, I'm never doing special teams. Nah, I'm done with that. Never again.
Get him off return, man. Get him away. No, you've earned that. You've earned that. You've earned that. You're the man now for this offense, and you've earned that opportunity. And like you said, when you earn that, man, you don't give that shit up. You take it and you run with it, right? And that's exactly what you've done from what I can tell on the outside looking in. Excited to follow along with you. Definitely need to see some more VR clips surface on the internet here throughout the season. Get those reps in, my friend. But thank you very much, man. That's all I got for you tonight.
Dude, I appreciate you having me. Hope you keep in touch. This is going to be an exciting year for the Stroudsburg Warriors, and I can't wait to get after it.
Hell yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself, my friend. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Tonight for the D2 Breakdown, we're talking all about the PSAC, Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. This is a conference that just a year ago, 4 teams in the NCAA playoff, which is an impressive feat for any level, let alone Division II, where as of late, only 28 teams. So you've got 1/7 of them coming from this conference. Quick math for you. Slippery Rock, they beat Cal PA to advance to the semifinals. They played a great game versus Ferris State. We'll talk about those teams, both of them ad nauseum tonight, Drew, but let's get into this thing, man. PSAC is a really loaded conference. I'm trying to think, in your time at Tech, you guys didn't really play any PSAC opponents. What about at Northwood?
My first ever college game was against Gannon University.
Okay, there you go.
I believe in my 4 years of playing, that was the only PSAC team.
How'd you guys do?
Lost in overtime. Didn't necessarily play that much, so can't take the blame on that one. First playing on defense was a tackle though, and then they took me right out because Eric Santiago was a dog that year. So
fair. Shout out Eric, man. Let's talk about the top dog in this conference, and that you have to start with no one else than Slippery Rock, man. The Rock, 12-2 a year ago, 5-1 inside of conference play. I said it earlier on. This is the team that gave the Bulldogs probably the best run for their money inside of that playoff run. And you're watching that game, I believe, at Ferris State, and Ramper and some of these guys going on the sideline, these wide receivers, they're airing the ball out. They had a great guy at quarterback we'll talk about a little bit later, Braden Long, who was a Harlan Hill finalist, and they really gave this Ferris team a run for their money. That was the best way to cap off this season, other than a win, of course, for the Rock. The best way to cap off this season and to show their product on the national stage. But how do they rebuild in 2025 after losing some of the top production, right? Winning culture, pedigree with consistent messaging from a long-tenured coaching staff. That's the short answer of that. And Sean Lutz, the man at the head of that, he is going to be a major part of that. Now, transfer portal-wise, they got a lot coming in, a lot going out. There's a lot of transactions there. Top 3 wide receivers from a year ago, Drew, are all gone. That's 2,100 yards and 20 touchdowns combined that are going out the door to the transfer portal.
Yes, that immediately, obviously, when you're 2,100 yards, you're like, okay, we're going to need to bring in some people that can play now. But we're also going to need the guys that weren't a part of that to be like, hey, you as a true freshman or from a season ago, you're going to have to step your game up as a redshirt freshman or as a true sophomore to that extent.
Yeah, you get to see some of that development from the guys that are internal inside of that program for sure. And like you said, the guys that need to plug and play right away need to be week 1 or even week 0 type of guys. I don't know if they have a week 0 matchup or not, but you're bringing all conference wide receivers from D3 Westminster and NAIA Missouri Baptist that helps supplement the receiving core right away, hopefully bring some production to that room. And then, like I said, the Harlan Hill finalist, Braden Long, he's done under center at the Rock. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. He's at Shippensburg actually now. But the running back tandem, that was one of the best best in the country that graduates and leaves the offense with more questions than answers going into 2025 for this Slippery Rock team. But as far as who you need to watch, they get a transfer defensive lineman, Brett Kwoka, who was a first-team All-PSAC selection in 2024, not for Slippery Rock, but for Shepherd. The Rams this fall, though, suiting up for the Rock. He should have 2 more years of eligibility. And then redshirt senior defensive back Michael Henwood, a guy that we've posted about in our channels before. He's back for the Rock after a 2024 season with 72 tackles, 3 interceptions. All in all, I, full transparency, expect the Rock to regress this year. I think a lot of people on the outside do. That's the job of the guys inside of that locker room, that facility, to prove people like me wrong. It's so hard to take the next step when you lose the amount of production that I just talked about. But if you are counting them out to be a top contender, at least in the west side of the division, you're dead wrong. This is a team that, again, under the tutelage and the guidance of Sean Lutz, will certainly be in the conversation on the west side of the conference. Feels like other teams may be more poised right now than Slippery Rock in terms of the PSAC, but this team will still be an interesting one to follow heading into the fall, Drew.
Yeah, little known, maybe unknown fact about Slippery Rock is that I believe at halftime of the Michigan game, they're always shown their score. Man. So that's pretty cool. I don't know what.
Isn't that awesome? That was a tradition that started, it feels like forever ago, and the Michigan people eat that up.
Yeah, I don't know what the connection is, but I knew about Slippery Rock before I even knew what D2 football was. So
seriously,
yeah, because as a kid, you're like, who is this Slippery Rock team? Because you're going to the Michigan games.
I do believe they played some games in the Big House way back when.
It might have been it. Or I think a coach left to go coach at Slippery Rock or something like that. Okay. But anyway, to the California-Pennsylvania Falcons, 2024 was a solid year for them. 10-3, included a regular season win over the team that we just talked about, Slippery Rock. But everything comes full circle, and they ended up losing to the Rock in the 3rd round of the playoffs. 10-win season, though, under their belt. That's obviously a consistency for the Falcons. However, though, with success usually leads to departure. And in this case, Bobby Boyd, who's their leading running back from a season ago, I believe he was close to eclipsing 1,000 yards. He's gone. Julian LaVenture, defensive lineman, gone. Eric Willis, gone, wide receiver, and defensive back Rashawn Murray. So kind of, Kobe,
gone.
Yeah, the reason I kind of looked at those 4 is you look at defensive line, you look at running back, you look at receiver, you look at defensive back. Like, it's kind of attacked on all aspects of this team that they're losing someone there. So that's obviously going to be interesting. But they bring in 9 guys in the portal, so that's very solid, right? You know, you lose 15, but like we talk about with most teams, you're kind of expecting, you know, the people you recruited there and out of high school to step up for a reason. That's right. Part of the things that D2 is. But as far as guys to go, you know, where their question marks are at, I think obviously when you lose a dynamic playmaker in the backfield, that's a huge part. So who can replace Boyd? And then defensively are able to reload. And quite honestly, I think defensively they'll be pretty good. I was looking at a couple of their guys coming back. Let's talk about Khalil Taylor, defensive back, as well as Keith Charney and Naquan Crowder, all guys that are potential breakout candidates from a season ago, and expect them to not only, you know, grow off their season, but to obviously lead the defense as well.
Yeah, Crowder's been a guy on my radar for sure. I've heard that name thrown around. And Drew, not sure if you're aware, but these guys play in one of the cooler rivalry matchups in D2 football. They've got a series with IUP. They play for what's called the Coal Bowl. Coal isn't like COAL there, but it is. It's a pretty awesome deal. The trophy is a neat one, and that's a game that's been pretty competitive as of late. These guys, of course, recently being the ones to retain that trophy. That's one of the cooler ones in the PSAC, and I think in Division II football as a whole. But when you talk PSAC football, you would be remiss if you did not talk about Kutztown and the Bears. This is a squad that has been at the forefront of this conference at the conference and national stage, and a top-tier PSAC team has been playing some of its best ball as of late. Suffocating defense, that's their calling card. They're able to win on the road, I think, is another big piece of this Kutztown team, and that's gone into the playoffs. That's gone into the PSAC championship. These are the things that we've seen throughout the course of the regular and postseason from this squad. You talk about the portal. They're bringing in 2 starting defensive backs, a starting wide receiver, all from Shippensburg. So stealing some of those PSAC foes, bringing them over, converting them to the dark side. In terms of who to watch for this team, got to start under center. Judd Novak, the quarterback for the Bears, heading into this one. He finished 24 with just under 2,500 yards, 24 touchdowns. He's going to be a redshirt junior in the fall. He's got 2 more years to play. Hopefully both of them are with the Bears. I'm sure they're thinking the same thing. And to me, 2 full years as a starter under his belt. His first year, very similar stat line to year number 2. Is this the year where he makes that jump, where he takes the next step in his progression with maybe a little bit of a supporting cast around him? And you talk about the way that he plays. He's gotten a lot more efficient in the passing game. His percentages, his touchdown to interception ratio, all those things are trending in the right direction. That more than just dropping back, though. This is not a guy you just put under center. It's a 3-step or a 5-step, and he makes a read. They love to roll him out. They throw on the run. They also do a little bit of that speed option, though, with him. He's very athletic out of the backfield. Seen him make some big chunk plays there with his feet. Running backs, Jaden Stewart, Steven Burkhart, those 2 are going to be his best friends, right? Combined for 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns. Both of them, again, redshirt juniors in the fall. If you can keep this offensive core nucleus together, we're talking about something very dangerous inside of the PSAC for the next couple of years. Stewart's 5'9", 200 pounds, and Burkhart 5'11", 210 in that same range. 2 New Jersey guys making up the backfield here for Kutztown. They don't get their running backs involved much in the passing game, which I would like to see change a little bit in 2025 after losing some talent at the wide receiver position, but we'll see if that happens. All in all, though, this should be a team to contend for a PSAC title. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Bears need to take care of business in the regular season. They should have their goals set, though, on hosting another NCAA playoff game, Drew. I think the ceiling is very high. They start the year off at home versus a top 10 or a top NE10 opponent, not a top 10's opponent, in Assumption, and then should be able to get things rolling from there. But if you can't tell, very high on the Bears. Of course, Craig Reynolds, who we had on the pod very recently, Kutztown alum. KU, baby.
Absolutely. Craig Reynolds, friend of the program.
Friend of the program. I like the sound of that.
So we'll take that where we can get it. As far as Kutztown is concerned, I love their logo too. If we're just not talking, I think it's a cool, bear. I feel like a lot of teams don't necessarily go all out.
There's a lot of bears. Yeah, there's a lot of bears, but
yeah.
How many cool bears are there?
Yeah.
I like that, dude. Tell me about, of course, had the quarterback, had Sean on the show earlier in the program, but tell me about this Stroudsburg squad, excuse me.
Warriors. Yep. We got the East Stroudsburg Warriors, 2024, 10-2 overall, 6-1 in PSAC play. They did earn a playoff berth a season ago. They're one of those 4 teams that we talked about, Kobe. But they were eliminated by one of those other 3 teams of the 4 teams we're talking about in California, PA, which obviously, you love to see the conference do good. But when one member of the conference takes out another member of the conference, it's makes that next season match even stronger, even, hungrier for the team, such as the Warriors. As far as their departures are concerned, to be completely honest with you, Tyreek Lewis and Tahir Mills, both of them were close to eclipsing 1,000 yards rushing a season ago.
Yep.
Both gone, one in the portal, one in graduation. They lose Raymond Simmons, the 4th, to graduation. They're stud linebacker, as well as losing Justin Cook, a receiver, and Xavier Gray, a defensive back, to the portal. This is the alarming thing, and maybe it is on Athlinks as we get all of our information from there. But no portal additions. Not saying it's necessarily alarming because, teams might not do the portal as much as others. But obviously in 2025 college football, it's kind of just okay.
Surprising, right? It's very much not the norm. And actually, Sean talked about that in the interview. He talked about coaches kind of maybe not unwillingness, but the unusual nature for them to go into the portal. He had mentioned very outright that this was not something unusual for this squad. They don't really rely on the portal for a lot of those additions. And typically, that's all, well and good for a team like this that continually can be competitive. But when you lose these guys, you got to find some other playmakers. That's going to be interesting to see how that pans out for them.
I think it is a lot of obvious trust within the program, trust within the coaching. development. And so we'll see who replaces the offensive production with both running backs leaving and a key receiver. We'll see who replaces the edge of losing a linebacker and a stud defensive back, right? So let's talk about a couple of those guys. We talked about Sean. Expect him to not only be, as good as he was last year, but if not better. And then I'm looking at a defensive playmaker that could step up as well as Everett Dingle. So as far as, the Warriors are concerned, there are pieces in play to necessarily get them back into the playoffs.
100%, dude. I agree with that. And talking with him, I left that conversation with a lot of respect for their operation. And he said it, man, pretty much outright of like, they feel really confident in their ability to recruit these guys out of high school and develop them and turn them into all conference and real quality players at ESU. And they've been able to do that in the past. So switching gears over now to the other side of the Coal Bowl we talked about earlier. IUP, man. Let's talk about the Crimson Hawks. 7-3 a year ago, 3-3 inside of conference play. This is a team that's had its up and downs. And in very recent history, this has been a playoff contending type of team. The ceiling for this team is very high, but when you lose the starting quarterback in Carson Hunter, who was most of your offensive production a year ago, that's when some of the question marks start to pop up offensively for this squad. Now, who answers some of those questions, thankfully, for this IU team? J.D. Younger, the running back, he's 5'10", 194 pounds. He was a second-team All-PSAC West selection a year ago. Just under 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. He didn't hit big. I put that in my notes there on many long runs, but to me was a guy that was consistent for them. You need to see that change a year from now, though, going into this fall. This needs to be a guy that, instead of getting 4 or 5-yard games, needs to chunk this thing into a 23-yarder, a 30-yarder, or whatever that is down the field, needs to bust open some of those runs. IUP needs a guy to step up in the offensive backfield, which is where they're losing a lot of their talent in 25. On the other side of the ball, defensive back Noah Johnston, 6'2", 185. Got a lot of length, a lot of athleticism at that position, which is really important. 78 tackles and interception a year ago. Heavy presence in stopping the run. And one thing that stands out about Noah, he was first on the team in solo tackles with 43. You know that playing that position. Guys don't get past Noah. That's exactly what you look for in a backline defender, right?
Absolutely, right? When you think of a guy like Noah, you're thinking of a guy that's going to put his helmet to the football, right? He's going to go make a play. He's going to step up. He's going to fill the gap the best way he can, whether it's, playing the alley, being the alley defender, whether it's coming from the backside and making the play on the far side. So when you have a guy like that, there's absolutely – you have more of a sense of confidence when the defense steps foot on the field.
Can be hard to find some DBs that are willing to go and thump in the box there and fit like that, and he's definitely one of those guys. The position group to watch, though, for me is the quarterback room. I talked about Hunter leaving. You bring in transfer, Matthew Reevy, who comes from D2 Findlay, but started his career at Boston College, where he actually got a degree. He was second-team All-GMAC selection a year ago, 2,600 yards and 26 touchdowns. I'll be the first one to admit that Reevy flew under my radar. I did not know he was putting up this type of production at Findlay. Were you aware of this guy, obviously having some GMAC background?
To be honest with you, after last season, I would say no, only in the simple fact of, we went to the GLIAC and the only GMAC team we played was Hillsdale, right? But what I do know, based about having a teammate that had previously played at Findlay, is not only do they produce hard workers, but they produce smart football players.
Oh yeah. They absolutely do. The Oilers do it right down there, man. They got a hell of a squad. They've got an NFL pipeline too that has been really active. Very recently. Mike Jarrell is one of those guys, but that's going to be an interesting deal. Can Reevy step in and be that guy? All signs point towards absolutely yes. He's got some weapons on the outside, like Maurice Massey. And the only other quarterback that saw any snaps last year, redshirt freshman Zayd Etheridge. And that's a question of he's probably going to be in another backup role this year, especially with a guy like Reevy coming in to probably take over the reins at that position. But the last piece on this IUP team, Frank Signetti Jr., he returns to IUP as the offensive coordinator. He was an all-conference DB for the Hawks in his playing days, which is a really neat deal. He coached under his father at IUP recently. He was the offensive coordinator for 2 years while his father was the head coach. That's a really cool story in of itself. Most recently, though, was the offensive coordinator at Pitt, Drew. Now he has been a part of 15 different NFL staffs. He's got a wealth of coaching and football knowledge that should be a big difference maker for this IUP team. 15 different NFL teams coming from Pitt back to IUP, where he obviously has some family roots and tradition. That is a hell of a get for this squad.
Oh, absolutely. I think at the D2 level especially, you're kind of not necessarily, the word short on like NFL experience, right?
Yep.
Not saying that like people, couldn't necessarily follow their dreams and eventually get to that if they wanted to. But anytime that you do get a coach that was blessed to come from potential NFL backgrounds, that's awesome. For instance, when I was at Northwood, Coach Arnold Sr., which was current ST coordinator, Coach Arnold's father, coached the U, and just being able to pick his brain when he was coaching the U when they were winning national championships and being on NFL staffs after that, like it's a very cool experience. And I think these D2 kids, are absolutely in, rare air, I would say.
Yep, 100%. Absolutely agree with that.
So as far as the next team is concerned, let's talk about the Bloomsburg Huskies. 6-5 a year ago, 4-3 in conference, which obviously that's kind of middle of the pack. I'm sure Kobe, we've talked about this with multiple teams, and I'm going to bring it up with pretty much any team that's 6-5, 4-3, because I've been a 6-5 team or a 5-6 team, whatever. You truly feel like you're 3 to 4 plays away from being.
Yeah, I wish I could say the same, to be honest with you, but I believe you.
Yeah, no, a little different. However, a huge factor that I think is going to help the Huskies is KJ Riley. He was not only their quarterback a season ago, but he was also their leading rusher, having that dual threat experience. So obviously trying to figure out where not only can you have your quarterback running the football, but also see about what about a running back getting some time, whether it's committee or a guy. But another factor on offense too that's going to be a really great return is your leading receiver in Jerry Griffin, who's going to be a guy for them as well. You're looking at defense, and we've talked about it with multiple teams as well. When you bring in a linebacker that is not only a guy that's a stud for you, but a linebacker that can be a leader, that's what Brady Thompson can be for this team. And so as far as the Huskies are concerned, like we've talked about, teams that are in the middle of the pack, you're a couple games, I'm sure you're a couple plays away from being 7-3 or 8-3, but you're a couple plays probably from maybe being 4-7. So bringing in 5 transfer guys as well, let's see what the Huskies can do for them next year.
3 of their first 4 games last year for this Bloomsburg squad, Drew, decided by a combined 8 points, if you can believe that.
Exactly what we were saying. You can be – what was their record within that again, Kobe, the first 3 games?
From last season, they were 6-5 and 4-3 in the conference.
Yes, and like we said, those 8 points right there is 3 wins or 0 wins. It could be next season. You know what I'm trying to say?
So they start 3-1. Their one loss was against a Seton Hill team that they gave them their only win in the conference. Seton Hill, that was their only victory. They won 15-14 over this Bloomsburg team. Now you talk about a team with some momentum. If you're 4-0 heading into this Kutztown game last year, I'm not going to say the result's going to be outright different. Kutztown kind of had their way with them, but that's a different moxie and a different attitude for a squad. You start 4-0 on the season.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah, absolutely, the way they carry themselves. So certainly look for them to not make that same mistake twice for this Bloomsburg squad. But we'll keep things going, and we'll talk about a team that it sounds like you at least had a little bit of familiarity with earlier on. Let's talk about Gannon and the Knight squad. And when you look at them, what jumps off the page immediately, you pick up a quarterback and a linebacker duo from D1 Maine who both saw snaps last year. They should both be guys that come in right away and make an impact. Anthony Harris, Tyshawn Stewart Crystal, respectively, at those 2 positions. The quarterback position does look pretty wide open heading into fall camp. I talked about Anthony Harris coming in, of course. You need to look at the wide receiver room. This is the kind of the point of emphasis here. Donnell Mason, he leads the way, 770 yards, 3 touchdowns a year ago. Who can step up and be in that wide receiver 2 spot, though? That's the point of emphasis for this room. You have a clear-cut number 1. Who can be the number 2 to take off some of the coverage, so to speak, some of the focus off of your number 1 guy? Because you know as well as I do, if you have one weapon, sometimes it's not enough. You need to have multiple guys out there to make sure the defense can't key in on specific targets. That could be Braden Sobolewski on the roster already, or it could be Chase Holmes coming in from D1 Dayton, that transfer coming in. They've got a couple guys who can compete for that wide receiver 2 spot type of deal. They also bring in Eric Rayburn as their offensive coordinator and O-line coach. He's coming from D2 UNC Pembroke, where he was the run game coordinator previously for the Braves. He played in the PSAC at Westchester, so another really cool deal there. But Gannon, 3-3 inside of conference last year. They didn't pick up any wins outside of that. They were 3-7. Really a down year for this Gannon squad. Looking to reload, bringing in some help from the D1 level. See if they can make it happen. New face of the OC spot.
Well, speaking of their coach being at Westchester, let's go right to Westchester with the Golden Rams. Similar story as Gannon, right? They went 4-3 in conference, but you go 0-3 to start, the non-conference play. So obviously you're going 4-6 overall. And if you're Westchester, that's not the type of season you want to have. So as far as some key returners, Jordan Cooper, when I read his stat lines and, was looking at the type of player he is, Kobe, 1,000 yards rushing for a quarterback, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Cooper Jordan, by the way, flip it.
Yeah.
Yep.
My bad.
I do it all the time with the rosters because they do the last name first on the stats.
Mess me up. Yeah. Rosters mess me up. Cooper Jordan.
You're good. My bad.
But yeah, you put Jordan on your back, you know what type of player you got to be, right? So he's that guy, right? So let's see the type of let's see the type of season he has this upcoming season. And he will be missing his first 2 receivers. So expect Robbie Longo to potentially be that guy to step up as the, number 1 guy. And then here's a cool story. So linebacker Connor Noble, who had a fantastic season ago, per Athlink, he entered the portal, but per Athlink, he's registered with the Westchester Rams. So one of those.
So it looks like one of those cases where entered, decided to come back to institution.
He pulled a Bimba Tunkara. And so that's a huge response, right? You get your leader back on defense. You get a guy who's not only a playmaker but a game changer. Expect Westchester to really use that as a driving force on defense.
That's a big deal, and I think I go back to our conversation, or my conversation more particularly, with Tony Anise just very recently, right? And he talked about how, on paper they lost their entire offensive line to the portal, right? All 5 starters. Well, he told me on the show, he's like, hey, we got 2 of those guys back. Bob and Tim Anderson are back, playing for Ferris State in 2025. That happens at this level when guys go out, test the waters, and they maybe don't get the interest or the love that they thought they would get. Or, in those guys' case, I'm sure they picked up some offers from some Division 1s. They didn't want to leave Ferris State and the winning pedigree and what was happening over there. Glad to see that's happening at other squads.
How are they able to play? We graduated with them.
That is a great question that I was wondering the same thing.
Big fan of the Anderson twins. That blows my mind.
That's insane that those guys are still playing ball. We got guys older than us. Like, I just turned 24, and we got people older than us still playing ball at the college level.
Yeah, big fan of them, obviously. Playing against them in high school, they're great players. That's crazy to me still.
That is ridiculous.
Let's talk
We'll keep
Kobe.
Things going. We'll keep things going, man. Edinburgh,
the
Scots.
Yeah.
Yep. Edinburgh. Let's talk about, for me, you talk about returners. It's nice when they announce some of the captains. That's an easy way for me to get some of the info. JT Taylor, Caden Spiegel, respectfully. Let's start with JT. He transferred in before last season from Notre Dame College, which is now unfortunately closed down at the D2 level. He made an impact right away. 30 tackles on the year, being named captain as a second-year transfer. I think that says a lot about a guy who came into this roster as a new, fresh face just a year ago. So that's a big deal. Caden Spiegel, the 6'2", 250-pound senior, he hasn't packed the stat book for the Scots. Obviously has made his impact on the roster. He's been named a captain. You don't just stumble into a role like that. And for me, what is important, 30-plus college games under his belt, Drew. This guy is a vet, and there's some things that you obviously can't just teach at the position. You need game experience for guys to get accustomed to this, playing at this speed. That won't be a problem for him. You bring in an all-conference wide receiver from D3 Western Connecticut State and Deshaun Allen, running back 1 and quarterback 1, the graduate, wide receiver 1, their best defensive player, both hit the portal. It's time for new faces to step up for this Scots team, and who better to lead them than Matt Scott? over at Edinburgh. So entering year 1 as the head coach of the Fighting Scots, that's a neat deal. They were 3-8 a year ago, 2-4 inside of conference play. We'll see if the Scots cannot improve on that conference record, Drew.
Yeah. As far as new coaches is concerned, there's a new head coach for the Lock Haven Eagles as Dan Mulrooney.
Mulrooney.
Yeah, departed for FCS Brown. The Lock Haven Eagles, though, obviously, when you get a new head coach in there, first thing that's going to happen is guys are going to hit the portal. In this case, 25 people hit the portal.
Yeah.
Big number, right? We talked about it with, whether it's Westchester or whether it's Bloomberg, right? 6-5, 4-6, right? Lock Haven, 5-6. You're 3-4 in conference. You're a couple of plays away from being, 6-5, 7-4, right? So, and then you get 25 players to hit the transfer portal. It's one of those where it's like, okay, now we got to kind of find a new identity almost. Not necessarily saying that it's going to be a bad identity or anything like that, but it's like 25 players at the portal. There were some good players in that mix. So it's like, all right, now who's going to step up? A couple guys that I'm looking at. When you have a linebacker that can be a stud, that's awesome. But when you have 2 linebackers that can be a stud, that's even better. Izzy Ramos as well as Rocco Daughtry. Expect both of them to be, forefronts for the defensive unit, right? Big-time playmakers for them. And then KJ Howard, the running back from them, leading rusher a year ago, I believe. Expect him to come in and not only, be the, driving force of the offense, but be someone that, this new staff can look at and be like, all right, this guy's right here. We're good.
Yeah, and his best friend under center, Jackson Ostrowski, for them, a quarterback who was a Harlan Hill nominee just a year ago, for very good reason. 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns through the air, and not a guy that's necessarily considered more of a dual threat type deal. I believe looks like he finished last year with only 91 yards on the ground. This isn't a guy that's going to hurt you with his legs, but damn it, he's going to hurt you with his arm. And this is a guy that has been the focal point of this offense under Coach Mulrooney. In 1 year with Lock Haven, he's already made this kind of impact. Very interested to see what kind of jump he makes in year 2. You talk about volume at the quarterback position, 431 passing attempts a year ago. This is a guy that has been very, very dangerous for this Lock Haven attack. He is tied for second most passing yards and touchdowns for this Lock Haven team. So that is a neat deal. Jackson is certainly going to be a guy to make this offense go. Let's continue down the list. A team and a program that has had some pretty prominent quarterbacks come through it as of late. That being Shepherd, the Rams, a team that have gone, again, up and down and have been a playoff type program in very recent history. Rob Ambrose comes in as the offensive coordinator for the Rams. Most recently was an analyst at D1 Maryland, now making the jump down to D2. He's known, though, Drew, for his 14-year head coaching stint at D1000. They had 3 trips to the national playoffs. This guy has a ton of experience across all levels of college football. He's going to be a big piece of this offense. Tyson Bagent, that's a name you should know if you're familiar at all with Division II football. The Shepherd product, who now is with the Chicago Bears, the prominent QB2 behind Caleb Williams up there. His brother is suiting up for the Rams now, Drew. A really cool story there. Ezra Bagent is a redshirt sophomore. He's going to compete with a few transfers for the starting job. The farting job.
Whoa.
The starting job.
Whoa.
I don't think they have that at Shepherd.
I hope not.
He's competing for the starting job at Shepherd. Last year's starter, Nick Powell, transferred out. Looks like they've got some guys in the portal that'll come in. Ezra's certainly going to be a part of that conversation. Imagine being one of the other PSAC teams, looking at the scouting report and seeing Bagent again after you were terrorized for probably 3 or 4 years by one of the best quarterbacks in D2 football history.
Absolutely. I guarantee that they're calling mom and dad and being like, come on, anywhere else? Seriously? But that's really cool.
I don't mean to seem like this Shepherd team is not very, far removed from some really great seasons. They're 6-5 a year ago. This is a team that is still performing at a high level, but 3-4 inside of conference play for this Shepherd team, for Coach Cook and company. That's not acceptable. That the standards are much higher for the Rams, and I just know that from covering the program. And Malikia Brown led the team all-purpose yards over 1,000. This is a team that needs to have guys like that to come back and make this program rebound.
Absolutely. And speaking of a program that's trying to rebound based on last season, Shippensburg, they went 2-9 this season to go 1-6 overall. Obviously, in today's day and age of college football, right? Like, the standard's the standard, and I'm assuming the coaches at Shippensburg are saying that that's not the standard, that's not good enough, right? So, key and interesting fact though is former Slippery Rock quarterback Braden Long recently transferred to the was named the Raiders head coach or quarterbacks coach. Whoa.
Thankfully, he didn't transfer. That would have been blockbuster.
That
Yeah,
would
that
have
would
been
have been wild.
that would have been wild. Some real NIL to get that done. So the Raiders quarterback and receivers coach for the 2025 season, current O-line coach Drew Gallardy, was elevated to OC this past season, right? So then what are we thinking? All right, so you got a new coaching staff and new OC, new quarterback coach, new receivers coach. All right, well, let's transfer receiver in, and that's exactly what they did. Transferred all-conference player from D2 Franklin Pierce, coming off a really good passing attack for him. They get him at receiver. The Raiders had 3 quarterbacks a season ago with 60 pass attempts, right? What do we do with that? You got to find some stability. You got to find a guy, right? There's a saying in football, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback, right? Like, that's the whole weird saying.
What about 3? What's the answer to 3?
I think it's maybe it's negative, So,
Does that PEMDAS that shit out? I don't know how that works.
I don't know. That Ohio State team had 3 quarterbacks that one year and ended up going to the Natty. So I guess we'll see about it. Maybe Shippensburg's lucking out right here, and they just need to have 3. But anyway, but it's gonna bring in some really good competition, right? And then you got Terrence Peterson Jr., who will be a key part of the defense. He was, at the linebacker spot a season ago, started 10 games at outside linebacker, and was 3rd on the team in tackles. So expect big things out of TPJ right there. And
like that.
Yeah, anytime there's a junior, you got to say it.
I like that. Moving over, Clarion, the Eagles, 3-8 a year ago, 1-5 inside of PSAC play. 13 reported transfers, lots of variety. This is what stands out to me off the top of my head looking at the list. 2 D3 running backs, a good playing experience. You got Tyreek Hall from Southern Virginia, Aaron Randolph from Bethany, and then they beef up the defensive line. Jerome Williams comes in from Allegheny, and William Hines from Walsh. 3 DBs and 3 wide receivers also in this incoming portal class, certainly areas they felt that they needed depth at over there at Clarion. Redshirt senior quarterback Anthony Garcia is back under center. He threw for 2,000 yards, also ran for almost 712 touchdowns. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. Dude is a unit. He can get it done with his legs and through the air. On the other side of the ball, you got to watch for Griffin Buzzell, 90 tackles a year ago, 2 sacks, 4.5 TFLs, interception. A dude that does it in all phases of the defense. He's back for this Eagles team. And then Larry Wilson comes in from IUP to take on the same role with the Eagles. He's the offensive coordinator. He helped the Crimson Hawks to top 5 standings in most offensive statistical categories in his time there in terms of PSAC standings. So really, for me, the direction is trending upwards for this Clarion squad. Again, 1-5 in conference a year ago. Expect that number to be better in 2025.
Absolutely. When you said originally 5'11", 205, I was like, oh, that's not big. And I was like, wait, no, he said 5'11". That's a big boy right there. Definitely make some plays with his legs too. Let's talk about the Millersville Marauders.
You always, dude. You had Mary last week too, and I put this on here purposely. I wanted you to say it. The Marauders, yes, sir.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some 2 players that not only are going to be leaders but also playmakers, returning captains. Actually, Cam Taylor, receiver, 208, 6'3", big body. Right, played in 21 games last 2 seasons. Hasn't had his true breakout season yet, but when this team's going to build, right? 1-10. I was on a team that went 1-10, right? You're only going to go up from there. You're going to expect him to be one of those key, building blocks to get going. And then Chris Pierce, linebacker, 6'2", 210. Similar story. He had not necessarily a starting role or anything like that, but definitely a guy that earned, some respect out of his teammates to get captain, and expect big things, and, expect him to be a building block for the defensive side of the ball after transferring from Delaware a year ago. However, there are some new faces in the building. both at the OC and the DC spots. Offensive coordinator Brian Ferguson was previously the D2 head coach at Concord, while this will be Clark's second stint as the DC for Millersville. I'm not even going to try to say Marauders, without Millersville with it. So, new faces and some new places right there for Millersville. So, expect, obviously when you go 1-10 and you go 0-7 in conference, it's all about getting that first one, right? It's all about getting that first one in conference. It's all about getting that, that first win in non-conference, right? And then building off that.
Yep. 100%. Let's close this thing out, man. Seton Hill, the Griffins, 3-8 a year ago, 1-5 inside of conference play. The previous head coach, Dan Day, he steps down from his role in June. Kevin May, previously defensive coordinator, promoted internally, to take his place. So not exactly a new voice inside of that program. Day, though, to go back to him, the all-time winningest coach in Seton Hill history. The program did only start in 2005. I did not know that. It's really a younger football program in the grand scheme of things. He was a part of that 2005 team. He was recruited and played in the inaugural team for this Seton Hill squad. So definitely a passing of the torch here as Coach Day steps down. Coach May, on the other hand, he's been on the staff for 6 years already. Certainly, like I said, not a new voice inside of this facility and this building. These guys are familiar with the way he operates and goes about his business. QB1, RB1 are gone. Offensive backfield, a lot of question marks right now. A lot of things to be determined going into fall camp. Richie McCormick from Arizona, linebacker that will draw a lot of attention defensively for this squad. And the 6'1", 240-pound, plays sideline to sideline, 92 tackles a year ago, 10 TFLs, 2 sacks, interception. That was good enough to be named first team all PSAC for him. That, to me, is the focal point for this defense and really for this team. How do they build around that? How do they improve on the 3-win mark from a year ago, Drew? And that kind of closes out the PSAC conversation. We do have 2 guys I want to touch on quickly that signed some pro deals as of late. The first of which you were on it immediately this morning, man. From Saginaw Valley on to, what was the Commanders and the Battlehawks. He's seen a little bit of pro football everywhere he's gone. Saginaw Valley State product Nick Whiteside at the DB. He is signed with the Detroit Lions, man. Give me the reaction to this one.
Awesome. I have a brother that plays baseball at Saginaw Valley. So he's had a couple conversations with Nick Whiteside before and said he's a great dude. Played against him as well. Great player. And he's playing for the best team in the National Football League. So
that's
awesome. So, yeah.
Hell yeah. And he was a dog in his time at Saginaw. 131 tackles, 12 interceptions as a Cardinal. Graduated in 2023 after a very storied career there. Signs with the Commanders, right? Spends most of that season on the practice squad. Did make a few appearances late in the year, week 17, 18, around that range. He was released from Washington before he was picked up by the St. Louis Battlehawks of the UFL. He played in 10 games for the Battlehawks. Got a lot of really good pro football experience there. And according to several news outlets, grabbed his first interception at practice today in his first day as a Lion. That's got to be a pretty cool feeling.
Better not be Woodward Sports that you're trusted.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And what makes it even better, his story, Drew, joins the fellow Michigan native and Saginaw alum Trevor Nowoski. Of course, we had on the show at multiple points, but very recently as 2 hometown kids in the Lions roster, along with the Wayne State alum Anthony Pittman, who also is a Detroit kid now on the Lions. They're a sucker for these hometown kids and they're players, too. These are not charity picks and charity signings for this Lions squad.
Ian Kennelly also.
Yes, Ian Kennelly, another great one recently, the Grand Valley product. Thank you for catching that. And also in the defensive backfield. So you got GV and SVSU both represented right now in the defensive backfield for the Lions. That's a pretty cool deal. But to switch over to the other side of the ball.
Maybe they go get Matt Judon, another GV product, another,
I like that. I like the sound. And I believe Judon started at Ferris, didn't he?
No, I thought he was at GV. He might have actually started at Ferris.
I believe he started at Ferris, but had finished his career at GV where he had all his accolades.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I don't care where he started. I don't care about where he finished. Finished as a Lion.
Yes, we need that. We need that. But move over to the other side of the ball. Colorado Mines, they had a wide receiver, Max McLeod, who tore up the D2 scene for a long time. He just signed with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Had a workout with Denver. I don't believe that really total pun here. I don't believe that worked out, obviously, because he didn't end up signing a deal with them. At Mines, though, this guy had an incredible career. 290 catches, 4,688 yards for him in his time with the Ore Diggers, 54 touchdowns in over 55 collegiate games in his career. That much in part to the deep playoff runs this team was making on a yearly basis with multiple trips to the national championship. This guy, man, you look at the pro day numbers that I'm going to pull up here in just a second that I remember posting about a while ago. He checked every box in terms of a professional wide receiver, a big body, big frame. You look at some of these numbers, 4.42 40-yard dash, a 4.09 shuttle, a sub 7.3 cone, and then a 10-foot broad jump. He checks every box in terms of a pro receiver. He gets to jump in and get right into the mix with his Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, who are right in the middle of a CFL season right now. So this will be a guy that has to get into the facility, learn the playbook right away, and try and get incorporated as soon as possible. I believe they play the Argos this week. And then you look at the wide receiver room at Mines. There's something in the water over here, Drew. They've had, under Coach Deerdick, they've had 8 1,000-yard receivers, 7 All-American honorees, 19 All-Conference selections, and they are just the second program in college football history to have 2 1,000-yard receivers in 3 consecutive seasons. Per him, he says, still the best place to play receiver in college football. I don't doubt it. After reading all of that off the top of mind, you looking at the guys that have made this up, the style of offense they've been able to run, it helps when John Matoka is your quarterback. They've been able to do it after him, after Johnny Football.
The way you're saying is, so it's Ohio State, LSU, Colorado Mines, Alabama for wide receiver U right now.
I would put Mines at the top. The one thing that separates Mines from some of those other schools, Drew, you should see the starting salary for a Colorado Mines wide receiver upon graduation.
Is it like that?
We're talking definitely north of 6 figures.
Oh.
This is like, and that's are all reported from like official channels. Like, these guys are obviously incredible football players. At Colorado Mines, they have to be brainiacs. They get out and they start making some cash immediately because they are into the workforce. They got connections all over the country at all the top engineering places. I don't even know because I'm a journalism major. I have zero crossover with that. There you go. There you go. But that, to me, separates them from any other school in the country. These guys are getting out, whether it's football or otherwise. They are successful in life. I love that.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I like it too.
I'm sure you would. We both freaking would, dude. Come out of school and make like 150. No shit. That'd be nice. Thank you, man. I think that was really solid. I appreciate your time. Tonight on the pod, D3 football. We talked some D3 top 10 rankings earlier on. It was a mixed bag of reactions. Now, the big preseason ranking that comes out, the full comprehensive top 25 rankings from d3football.com. It's not just me talking about the rankings tonight. Jimmy as well on the pod. Jimmy, welcome back, my friend. Excited to talk about this. Looking like you're ready to go, brother.
Always ready to go, Kobe. Always.
I love that, my friend. I love that. But also a somewhat fresh face on the pod. Just dropped his version of the pod today. Got to join him on the left hash call. The man himself with one of the coolest backdrops in all of podcasting. Look at the helmet array and jersey setup behind him. That is meticulous, my friend. Seth Howard, welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Pumped to be on. This has been a huge fan of your show for a long time. It's a honor to be here and talk a little ball with you guys.
Thank you very much, dude. I'm excited. I'm excited and humbled to have both you guys on here. I think this is going to be fun. It's not exactly Skip and Shannon. We don't need to necessarily go down that route, but this is going to be a fun deal. Have a little bit of debate going on. Obviously, a lot of WIAC flair in our guests or our co-hosts today, which I'm excited about. But first things first, you take a look at these D3 preseason rankings, and there are some things that are apparent and jump out right away. The first of which absolutely not being North Central and Mount Union coming in at number 1 and number 2. Those things I think are kind of givens at this point. We've come to respect these programs as teams that are perennial Stag Bowl type contenders. From 3 onward is where things start to get interesting, right? A lot of teams getting a lot of respect. Some teams getting very little to none. That's what we're here to talk about tonight, fellas. Any general takeaways, feedback from the D3 rankings before we jump into some of our topics?
A lot of surprises. I mean, there's a few right off the bat. I mean, Mount Union having 1 vote, I think that does surprise me. I think North Central should have all 25 number 1 votes in my opinion, but otherwise, I mean, not a lot of surprises. Obviously, there's a few 4-loss teams in there, which, does a 4-loss team belong in there? I don't know. I think the ones in there do, but I certainly think not a ton of surprises on my end.
I would definitely agree with that. I definitely can see the point in that take. And I think the first thing to kick us off here, talking about some of the underrated squads. We'll talk about the North Centrals and the Mount Unions of the world a little bit later in the program. But I want to start things off with maybe the teams that aren't getting the love that we think they deserve coming off the rip. And I'll kick things off, fellas. Randolph-Macon, Yellow Jackets, a team that we've followed the last couple of years, come in at number 21 in this year's preseason rankings. Everyone knows it ain't about where you start, it's about where you finish. But this team in particular, you're coming off 2 deep playoff runs. And for me, consistency and turnover at a lot of positions is an important deal. It can't be overstated, especially for this Yellow Jacket squad. And the way that they did that, I think, is very impressive as well. They dominate the ground game on both sides of the ball. In the trenches, they've been able to win a lot of their games on the road or at home. They joined Mount Union, North Central, and Wartburg as the only programs to reach the round of 16 in 22, 23, and 24. That's elite company for Randolph-Macon. They deserve to be in this conversation. They get tested early on. Quality team in defense in Central College that we've posted about. I think a few times their defense is always at the forefront of the conversation in D3 football. But you pick up a statement win early on in the season like that, to me, going into ODAC play, I think they dominate the conference. I think they roll and give themselves a very good shot at getting an auto bid into the playoffs, and I'm really excited to see what this RMC squad does in 2025. I say that with confidence, fellas, because the last conference loss for this RMC team, they came in 2021 by 1 point to Washington and Lee. Since then, 44-3 in conference since 2018. Those type of numbers make me believe the ODAC is in for a lot more trouble than what they're used to. The offensive backfield, they lose some big production. Can the sophomore quarterback, Riley Justice, can he step up? How does the offensive coordinator, Nick McGee, keep the momentum rolling with some turnover at key positions? But I go back to it, man. Proof is in the pudding of this team. They've bounced back through turnover at some kind of key positions. I think Randolph-Macon poses a very big threat to whoever's in that region. I go back to that game against Johns Hopkins very recently in the playoffs and how they've gone toe-to-toe with some of the perennial powers in D3 football. Really excited about the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, another team that I have my eyes on is Wartburg at number 9. I know we're talking about underrated teams and overperforming teams, but I think Wartburg at 9 is still pretty low considering they're a perennial playoff contender making deep pushes year after year. They're ranked 5 in the preseason last year heading into the season, and they kind of withered away to 11 to 13 through the week 6 and later in the season. But they're always so tough, man. They give the WIAC lots of trouble in the playoffs too, as Seth can probably attest to. I can certainly attest to that. It might be a chalky pick to call them potential overachiever already starting out at 9, but just knowing that the culture that Coach Winter instills in the value of these Wartburg Knights, year after year leading Division III in rushing defense, ranked nationally over the turnover margin, and bringing back the ARC Defensive Player of the Year is always good as well, and a really, really reliable front 7 for Wartburg. Continuing to stop the run and forcing turnovers would be crucial for them if they want to get past a team like Mount Union, North Central. There's these really, really elite caliber teams. They got
Jimmy with the chalky pick.
Yeah, very chalky, very chalky.
Chalky, dude. And I go back to that game against North Central. You think Owen Grover and that linebacker core for this Wartburg team and how you couldn't necessarily stop Luke Lane in the offensive attack from North Central. They damn near got the closest to at least slowing them down. I think that, if I remember correctly, that's a national semifinal or national quarterfinal type of matchup very recently that I'm talking about, and memory's not perfect, but I remember watching those guys play. I remember the defensive side of the ball from that team over there in Iowa, and a team that, Seth, I think you're pretty familiar with as well.
Absolutely, yeah. No, these guys are always very, very tough to play. Played against them while I was at Simpson and coached against them this past year. I'm really interested to see what they do this coming year. Lost a lot of talent, lost a lot of depth on the offensive line. I'll be interested to see what their quarterback situation looks like, but they're always going to be tough. We had Quincy Griffith on the pod. He's a Wartburg alum now at the University of Drake, and he brought up a great point that staff has been there forever. They play a lot of their coaches played there, coached there, and it's been that way for a really long time. That staff doesn't move around a whole lot. They're going to be great on defense, and I don't care what time of the year they're playing. They're going to be hard to play against.
They're gritty as hell. And you talk about quarterback situation. Tell me about a team that knows exactly what their quarterback situation looks like, my friend.
we're talking about teams that are going to be overachievers this year. I'm going to pick none other than the University of Wisconsin River
Oh,
Falls.
wow.
I'm not sorry about the
tough
pick. I won't be sorry about the pick. You can find me later, Kobe. But at the end of the day, I'm a homer, and it's just fair to say. But if we're talking about overachievers, If I told you that the number 19 team in the country right now is going to eventually be in the top 10, the top 5, and make a playoff run, you wouldn't be surprised if I told you that was going to be the University of Wisconsin River Falls. You bring back 14 and Caleb Blaha, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's coming back from an injury. My sources tell me that he is healthy and he's ready to rock and roll, his sources being him, and they are ready to make a run. And as well, you bring back the leadership, Coach Walker, Coach Matheson, Coach Wiss. They're ready to rock and roll. And honestly, this is something you guys probably don't even know about. They bring back a receiver who didn't even play back here, who's probably, in my opinion, going to be one of the best receivers in the entire WIAC.
Okay.
His name is J.D. Hilton. He's coming for blood this year. And then the last piece, for sure, there's going to be some questions in that defensive backfield. You lose Aaron Borgerding, Mike Brown, Dylan Brown, who's got a Colts invite, and then Andrew Schumacher as well. And I think that's fair. I think those are fair questions to ask. But at the end of the day, Coach Wood, coaching the defensive backs, and Coach Wiss, they're going to get those guys ready to rock and roll.
Top gun, baby. They ain't going anywhere. That is plastered everywhere in the facility. It's absolutely fantastic. And you talk about from a perspective of yourself, no one has seen the inner machinations of Blaha's mind like you. And you've actually played a part in some of his development. Obviously, you're going to be humble here and say that it was a very tiny part. I'm sure he would say otherwise, right? You two being as close as you were and having played that role in his development, how we can talk from the homer's perspective here and the personal perspective, how gratifying would it be to see him go out and fulfill that potential that we know he has? Obviously, they got cut short last year due to injury. Talk about the expectation level for him and just maybe the freedom that I think he plays with in knowing what he's capable of.
Here's the thing about Caleb. A lot of people will say what you want about what are his best traits, right? Some would say it's the athleticism. Some would say speed. Some would say experience within the offense. His number one trait is toughness. If you look at the amount of snaps that guy has played in the last 3 years, it's unbelievable. And that's not just because he doesn't get hurt. Obviously, we saw that. But for him to battle through what he's battled, he's an extremely humble human being. Like you said, I've worked with him quite a bit, but the work ethic, the work ethic that guy has. You asked what would it mean to see that guy, really his dreams come to fruition this year. It would bring a tear to my eye. I've seen a lot of, as someone that's played with him, coached him, I believe in Caleb. I believe in what those guys are going to get done this year. I'm so excited to see what this season is going to bring to them. And I know that all of those guys are going to be ready to go, including Caleb.
That's Iron Man, dude. That is freaking Iron Man under center.
I think Logan Hansen put out a rating that said the most amount of snaps in like the last 15 years or something like that was Caleb. Is total dropbacks and rush attempts by him, and which would probably be pretty accurate.
Wild. That is wild. And, we'll stay right in that kind of wheelhouse of conversation. You look at these rankings, something that jumps out right away, 4 WIAC squads in the top 25. This is something that we've come to expect over the years, the WIAC being the premier conference in D3 football week in and week out. And some people have, had that come under question. I think it still stands. I'm sure I already know what you guys think of that, so I'm not even going to pose the question to you two. But to me, what's more interesting about this is there's no clear leader in terms of the voting. I think the voters were a little conflicted with a conference that very oftentimes cannibalizes itself over the course of the regular season. You have just slugfest week in and week out, where last year we saw it come down to Platteville and Stout, battling things out in terms of who is sharing the title, or can Platteville win it outright. We know how that, Jimmy, we know how that unfortunately finished for the boys down there. But talk to me, Jimmy, start with you. Thoughts on the WIAC this year? No clear power, or does someone stand head and shoulders above the rest inside of the conference?
I think it's anyone's conference, truly. I think there's a ton of really great teams. We could sit here and talk about every single team. They're all great, except for like 2 of them. But the WIAC is a powerhouse, black and blue, physical conference that Seth likes to say cannibalizes itself. And I think that is no truer statement could be made. Winning the WIAC can mean finishing first, but it's also a win to get into the playoffs with all the bullets in the gun. Like, it's so rare. You see it last year with River Falls. Like, you lose Caleb Blaha, and just, getting in the playoffs out of this conference with minimal injuries is an impressive feat in its own right. I mean, you have week after week get injuries with your stud lineman, your stud DN. It's like you got to keep those guys healthy if you want to have a long-term successful run in the playoffs. And I think the fact that the WAC is so physical and you get all these guys getting beat up all at regular season, I think it's kind of like a wear and tear thing. As you go on deeper into the playoffs, you can say, oh, that's just WAC.
Yep.
How about you come watch the game? How about you come watch Whitewater Lacrosse? How about you come watch River and Oshkosh? You know what I mean? Like, come watch how physical these games are. I had a front row seat to every game this year. I saw it all. The last 2 seasons, I saw it all.
Yep. 100%. And we know about the teams that are ranked in there, and there's a few more that are receiving votes on the outside looking in. Seth, tell me what you know about those squads and how impressive it is that they landed 4, and the realistic possibility that there very much could have been 5 or even 6 teams in this ranking.
Right. Jimmy said it best. I mean, they definitely do cannibalize themselves throughout the entire year, and every week is a war in that league, and it's true. We're 14 votes away from having UW Oshkosh in here. It wouldn't surprise me if after a few weeks they'll land themselves in there. They also very well could have 3 or 4 losses, going into conference play. But honestly, yeah, there's no clear leader at this point. Like, you could say it's Lacrosse, but you could also say that it's River Falls. You could say it's Platteville. You could say it to any of these guys, honestly.
Yep.
But it's going to come down to who's going to be healthy at the end of the year, and that's a big question mark. You never know. I also think Stout being left off this list is absurd as well. I hate to say it, I truly do, but that team is insanely good. They're insanely good. You go to any other league with any of these teams, and they're going to dominate in any league. I truly believe that. If we look at the best teams around the country, they play football in Wisconsin. And ultimately, there will be 2 or 3 teams with 3 or 4 losses, but that's what you do when you play each other.
Yeah, and something that's come under fire too recently is the playoff finishes from this conference, right? And I think a big piece of that, Jimmy, you touched on it, right? When you get into the playoffs and you're missing 2 or 3 of your top guys because they have just been beat to shit for the last 5 weeks, that's a tall ask right there, right? And so when you can get into the playoffs, and this is no discredit to a team like North Central, but you look at some of the stats of some of those guys and how they're able to maybe take some of those guys out at halftime or third quarter of these games, they're not having to endure some of that. That's more of actually a credit to North Central because they're able to put these teams away and put these opponents away in the first half and the third quarter. So I don't want to make that seem like any kind of disrespect whatsoever, just really the way that it is, right? And speaking of, not the cleanest transition I've ever made in my life, let's talk about some of those top dogs and those top 2 teams that come off right away. And I think to start things off, Jimmy, tell us about the defending Stag Bowl champions, a North Central team that will be without Luke Lanen, but still has a lot of things to look forward to in 2025.
And okay, so obviously you lose Luke, but anytime you have Brad Spencer at the helm, you got a chance. They're going to bring in a ton of great quarterbacks in the portal, maybe even some freshmen are going to compete. Just a winning pedigree and stability on the coaching staff, as we've seen year after year. Just sticking to their identity of smash mouth football, establishing the run game and breaking the will of their opponents in the first half is what we've seen for decades, it seems. I mean, they're in the top of pass breakups, sacks, interceptions, turnover margin. And also, they have a really, really, really strong red zone defense, the bend don't break mentality, if you will. Again, great front 7, really good linebackers, DBs. Like, they're just loaded all around. Like I said earlier, anytime you have Brad Spencer at the helm, you got a chance. Straight up, he's just a dog. Like, there's nothing else for it. He's just a leader of men.
I like that. I think that's pretty well said, my friend. And their competition in the Stag Bowl a year ago, a team that, again, gets the media coverage because they deserve it. Mount Union, the Purple Raiders, very much will be back in the national conversation this fall. So
every year Mount Union is going to be in this conversation, right? And this year's going to be no different. They bring back a bunch of guys who have played a ton of football. And I would say the stats back it up. Do you guys know how many games Mount Union has lost in the last 20 years?
That's a great question.
15.
I do not know the answer to.
They have played more seasons than they have losses by 5. And it doesn't take a mathematician to know that this team is going to dominate again in 2025.
Silly.
And the deal is the players on that team know that they're going to win 11 games. The staff knows they're going to win 11 games. That's just what Mount Union, frankly, does. And now here's the question. Who's going to play quarterback for them? Frankly, I don't think it matters. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, they're going to be the best team in that league, and they're going to be healthy because they don't play anybody. And really, They're going to go and well, early on in the year, actually, they do. Now that I say that, they play Wheaton, who's going to be a good team. Now, don't get me wrong. And then they also are playing a team in Grove City who has.
I was going to say those first 2 weeks,
an
they
incredible
definitely
run.
get out of their comfort zone
More
a
so
little bit.
talking
Talk
about the conference play. You know, those
There you go, there you go.
75 conference titles that they have early on is probably going to be their biggest test until they get into the playoffs, to be honest. But a lot of questions are still going to need to be answered here in the next 39 days as far as who their quarterback's going to be, who their number one rusher is going to be. But I'm excited for what the Purple Raiders are going to bring this year.
Yeah, losing Echeverry is a big blow. And you go into that conference play, the lack of John Carroll on that schedule certainly helps and bolsters your argument. You talk about conference play. One team I will give credit to, though, a Marietta squad that I think will surprise some people going into this fall. They gave Mount Union a run for their money last year. If I remember correctly, that game was a lot more competitive than years past. They pick on them in the second to last week of the season, I believe. Yeah, November 8th, they'll play Marietta. That's an away game for this Mount Union squad. And if Marietta takes care of business, that could have a lot of conference title implications on the line. Mount Union, very obviously favored in that matchup right off the get-go. A lot can change between week 1 and week 9 or whatever that looks like. So it will be a very interesting deal. But one more team that I think you wanted to touch on, Seth, in terms of one that made some noise this ranking cycle.
One of the things about this team and Mary Hardin Baylor is they are unbelievably talented, and they're going to reload each and every year. They definitely take advantage of the transfer portal more than other teams do. And having three losses going into the playoffs last year and ended up making it all the way to the quarterfinals, I think they're as hot as anybody going into 2025. Now, they do have 4 losses, and having played and coached against these guys, let me tell you, they are ridiculously good. And also, here's what I will say on top of that. They don't like to lose very much down there at UMHB. And a couple of 4-loss seasons back-to-back probably has Coach Harmon feeling a little uneasy, which is why I believe the Crusaders are due for a huge season.
Keep this thing going. Let's talk about some teams left off the list, right? We're talking a lot about the rankings, of course, top 25. Who do we need to be talking about that didn't crack the top 25? A lot of these squads we'll talk about, I'm sure, we're receiving votes in that, but nonetheless, all those guys are taking it as a chip on their shoulder, that coaching staff, that locker room. I'm going to kick things off here. Washington and Jefferson. This is a team, for me, the presidents that need to be talked about. They finished as the second team left out. People are obviously aware of this squad, but again, whether you are ranked second or 202nd, every guy in that locker room has a chip on their shoulder. Hell, I'm sure the guys at North Central still have a chip on their shoulder from things that stupid media pundits like us are saying on a day in and day out basis. But this Washington and Jefferson team, they've been written off. They lose their stud quarterback from a year ago, a defensive playmaker that went on to earn almost every accolade at the D3 level as possible. They went 9-2 last year, 9-1 inside of the conference. This is a team that brings back more than I think people give them credit for. You take Carnegie Mellon off the schedule, that really sets up this matchup for Grove City in September. And again, you talk about the conference play in the PAC. It's no pushover. But when you take away a team like Carnegie Mellon, all of a sudden things start to shake up a little bit differently. And Jimmy, if you remember, we posted that clip, or I guess actually Grove City posted the clip of us talking about, some of the top D3 matchups. I may or may not have said, Seth, that it was Grove City's conference to lose inside of the clip, to which Washington and Jefferson may have fired back the best clapback on Twitter in a long time. They actually ratioed the tweet, which is so freaking incredible. So kudos to whoever runs the socials over there at W&J. I did not forget about that. Absolutely respect the hell out of you guys and your operation over there on the field and off. But with that being said, schedule's not a breeze. After, a great test to start the year at home, they have Utica to open things up. I expect this team to really find a new identity. And I say that not because there's a new voice or a new coaching staff in the building here, fellas. Coach Sirianni and company, in 2025, at least for Coach Sirianni, it's his 23rd season at the helm of this President's squad. He has done a lot of really good things in charge of this program. He's been through turnover, but he's got some big-time talent coming back. Not one, 2 1,000-yard receivers. They were one of only 2 teams in all of NCAA football last year to have a duo with those kind of stats coming back. Jacob Mikosko and, of course, John Peduzzi, the 2 receivers coming back for this squad. It's going to help a new face under center, whether that's Kellen Stahl, a guy who got some snaps last year, someone else under center. I'm not sure. What I do know is that Washington and Jefferson, you are our team to watch in 2025. Ratio me anytime. I'm absolutely here for it.
Now,
That's
if
my pick.
I might take the wheel here and shocker to everyone. I'm going with the UW style Blue Devils. I mean, come on now. I mean, again.
So much WIAC talk for one episode, boys.
I know. We take a lot of heat for talking about the WAC, but you got to talk about the best teams, right? So lots to prove for the Blue Devils. Obviously, making the Isthmus Bowl last season, the first postseason run in a while, if you want to call it that, a bowl game. You know, it's extra football. That's all we're looking for in Menominee.
Sure.
Here. It's bulletin board material. All year last year, we were solid. We were battling. Didn't really crack into the rankings. We are returning a dominant trio of linebackers led by Blaine Brick Seidel, who some say is the scariest man in the WIAC. This kid is an absolute physical presence. His name, we call him Brick. This kid's name is Brick, if that tells you anything. He was leading the WIAC in tackles prior to his injury last season. The kid flies around sideline to sideline. And there is no reason why the Blue Devils cannot take down Wartburg in week 2. Expect a bloodbath of physicality in that matchup all across the board. Get Adam Moen some carries, force some turnovers on defense, and hey, all we got to do is stay consistent and bring the juice, just like Stutzy always says, baby. That's it.
I like that. And when it comes to Moen, we talked about him a lot last week, or was it even 2 weeks ago now? But talking about him, we know what he's able to do under center, especially when given time, right? Looking down the field, you know what he's able to do with his arm. What about with his legs? What screams his athleticism to you? What's one of the main arguments you have that makes him a dual threat type of quarterback inside of this conference?
So I think he's a really patient runner. And, you see all these memes of like Le'Veon Bell, like sitting in the hole and like finding it. That's how Adam Moen runs. And also, not to mention,
crazy comp, but I'm here for it.
He's a very, very physical runner. He's extremely patient with the ball. He has great field vision. He can make guys miss. He can put his shoulder down. Like, I'm telling you, man, this kid, there's no ceiling for him. I said it a couple weeks ago. I'll say it now. There is no ceiling for Adam Moen.
I like that, and I concur. After looking at the, seeing him play a couple times last year, and then looking at the stats, obviously what he's been able to put up. So
I think it's the film. I mean, the stats tell the story, but I think the film, it's the eye test for me.
Amen.
It's what I see. That's it.
I like that. Seth, why don't you save us from more WIAC talk?
Well, I'll do exactly that. Give me UW Oshkosh as my team, the first team left out of the top 25. Dare I say more? They have a monster schedule coming up for them here in 2025. They have one of the, if not the hardest schedule in the entire country, opening up out there in Linfield, out there in Oregon, and then at North Central before finishing up with Roosevelt before they play River Falls in first round of conference or first game of conference play. Don't be surprised if they have 3 losses going into conference play. I wouldn't be surprised. But at the end of the day, they bring back their top rusher in Justice Lovelace, and they also bring back Cole Warren, a quarterback who played some significant snaps early in the season before transitioning to a new guy. But however, this team, I really like what Peter Jennings does over there at UW Oshkosh. And I think it won't be surprised to anybody if they end up here in the top 10, for sure in the top 25 by the end of the year.
I believe that. Another big piece, too, I mean, keeping Trey Tetzlaff around, obviously you lose the production on the outside. He's the running backs coach now for the guys down there. Someone obviously being in very similar shoes, going from a playing career directly into a coaching career. Talk about that transition, what kind of impact someone like him can have on this roster. Especially
for a guy like that who has the production as a player, a lot of guys are going to look to him to have that leadership. And, as a guy that's definitely done that, I think he's going to have an outstanding career as a football coach, just having the skill set as a leader. But it can be hard, as a young coach. You've played with a lot of those guys that are in that locker room, and sometimes that can be hard. I don't see that being a challenge for him, mainly because he was a phenomenal player. Sometimes if you were just that guy that was hanging around just like me, sometimes you become boys with those guys. But for him, as a guy that had that production, I think it'll be a seamless transition for him.
Love that, dude. Fellas, this has been, I won't even lie, it's been one of my favorite segments that we've had on the show in a long time. So this is a dynamic we definitely need to keep moving forward. Thank you both very much. Super fun. I can't wait until we get into, some in-season stuff. Imagine when we have actual football to talk about, and we don't just look at graphics and read stat lines. That's what we need, damn it.
We're coming.
Need some football, man.
Yeah, it's like scary fast, actually. So football, you can take your time. We'll be ready for you whenever you come around. In the meantime, we'll continue to talk about rankings and hypotheticals. Fellas, Thank you both very much. Had a blast with both you guys, man.
Appreciate you, Kobe.
Always a pleasure,
Absolutely.
Kobe.
On the NAIA football scene tonight, we're going back to some different position groups. Let's start things off with the running backs. Matt, we've got a talented group to talk about tonight. A couple guys that I feel like are by far and away the most center of attention for most media. I mean, you got to get those guys right out of the way up front. Tell me about those two.
Yeah, Darius Neal and Gunnar Yates, two guys that have potential to be National Player of the Year candidates. They are that good. I know Gunnar Yates is somebody we've talked about on the show before and have had on the show before. Absolutely fantastic guy, and also an even more phenomenal athlete for Southern Oregon. They were the sleeping giant in the frontier that has kind of surged recently, and they're looking to be a top contender going into next season. That'll be off the back of Gunnar Yates, a guy who had, 1,300 plus all-purpose yards, just a phenomenal athlete. And Darius Neal for Georgetown, kind of the bread and butter main guy of that team, really succeeded with Georgetown and was their main guy. He was the reason they made a big run last year, especially with some of the spots on their offense being questionable. Definitely with how defensively centered that squad was the previous year, having a guy like Darius Neal on the field that can help you chew clock and manage the game is super important. But it's also notable that, like, when he was taken out of the game, Georgetown was in a tough situation. Clearly they're X factors, somebody that teams are gonna key on, but he's definitely good enough to where that might not matter. I think he's got another, 1,000+ yard season in the cards, especially in a super competitive Mid-South. I'm excited to see how he does. But two guys that definitely need to get out of the way, because we want to mention some guys we don't get to talk about all the time.
Yes, I think that's the perfect time to do this, and those two guys are obviously deserving to be on this list as well, or that's why we're talking about them. But to move on to these guys, I think sleeper would be just not appropriate for these guys. These guys have all types of different accolades at the conference and national level, but what we do, like you just said, we don't get to talk about these guys just as much as maybe some of the other bigger names. Let's start things off. Amon Williams from UPike, the redshirt sophomore, who's a guy that is an all AAC running back and a UPike team that just made the move over from the Mid-South not too recently, right? So you're talking about guys who are already cracking through at the highest level of this conference. Also on the national stage, I mean, a 2024 All-American type of back. This is a guy that really did it all for this squad. The all-time AAC single-season rushing leader last year as well in 2024. You talk about his running style as you take a look at some of the tape here. Balanced, tough runner, agile, good in space. But when I turn on the tape here, it looks like defenders need to go back to the angle of pursuit drill, Matt. He's got him looking stupid. He breaks through the second level, whether it's inside, outside, or regardless. You look at the guys in the defensive secondary, first of all, just lack of effort on that tackling right there. But you look at the guys in the defensive secondary, their straight angle turns into a bow, turns into, oh shit, I'm behind about 10 yards. This is one of those guys that makes defenders look stupid at all phases of the defense. He's done a very good job of that, and he's going to need to continue to do that. No returning quarterbacks for this Pike squad. Williams, the featured player, of course, looking to take down top dogs like Reinhardt, and he has to be the man leading the charge. He's ready for that responsibility, I think. When you look at an offensive backfield, the best friend for a fresh face under center is a dog to share the backfield with. He is absolutely that, I think, in every sense of the word, as you see a couple of the plays there. 5'11", 185 pounds. He's got breakaway speed. I think you see that in the tape when you turn it on. But maybe what you don't see is that he's also durable enough to play, I mean, almost every single snap for this squad. At running back is not really an every single snap of the game type of position. Obviously, you go through maybe different guys on different series, but he's durable enough that he's going to be out there any given Saturday, and he's a guy that's not going to miss extended periods of time. And as a lot of great coaches of mine have told me, your best ability is your availability, and Amon Williams embodies that, Matt.
Yeah, being able to be a guy for UPike that as a redshirt freshman was breaking records for them.
Ridiculous.
Staple of your team for years to come. Absolutely a guy they're going to be leaning on. And I think somebody who's going to have a few very productive seasons ahead of them on this honestly surging UPike team. They ended the season ranked last year in the official NAIA poll. They have a lot of good things going. It's going to be interesting to see how they piece it together. And I think Amon Williams is going to be spearheading that.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Keep this thing going. Tell me about Tyson.
Yeah, so Tyson Denkert from Midland, a senior on that football team. Now, Midland is another team. You'll notice with a lot of these guys we talk about, they are surging as their teams are surging, which is why I think these are guys to watch, because these are teams we will probably be talking about at some point during the season, and you're going to see
Absolutely.
these names come up. Midland is absolutely one of those teams, especially in a GPAC where teams like Concordia are taking a step down. Teams like Northwestern have question marks all over their rosters. Yep. This is an absolutely fantastic time for Midland to take that step back up, back into the top 25, back to being the 4, the 3, the 2 team in this GPAC conference. And it all starts with Denkert, because Denkert isn't just, an all-conference running back, an all-American running back. He also gets it done for you in the return game, which is a huge asset. Super, he's a stockier guy. He's built very solid, but he's super explosive. He's kind of Midland's do-it-all guy, and off of the back of him, they're going to be able to go places this year.
Yeah, 100%. You talk about that GPAC, right? A guy like Tyson who makes things go inside of a conference that, like you said, has been dominated by just a few teams here and pretty much a lot of history. Feels like the window is potentially open for teams like Midland, but of course, you talk about you still have to get over the hill and get over the mountain. How do you measure that or quantify that for a team like Midland? Is it just against those top opponents? How do you build up into games like that?
Definitely, with the way the GPAC just is structured, you have to be able to pull off wins against those top teams. Guys like Tyson Denkert are going to be key in getting you there. A guy, like I said, who could do absolutely everything for you and is multiple-time award winner. He's pretty much been the heart and soul of your offense for the past few years now, getting a little bit of experience as a sophomore, but obviously that junior season was really something special, and the year before that also.
And we've seen the weather played at some of these GPAC games, especially later on in the season. Obviously, you are all too well familiar with that. But if you don't have a good ground game, you're not finishing at the top of this conference, right? That's safe to say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
100%.
I mean, you are playing in snow at the end of the year. I remember going down to Morningside on certain seasons in Sioux City, and it is -5 degrees and there's snow going. Like, it is just absolutely ridiculous. You're bonking heads with guys like Tyson
two-gloving it or
Denkert.
what. There's going to be minimal pass attempts made on playing conditions like that. But to keep things moving, man, let's go to Missouri Baptist and their guy out of the backfield, Leonel Banks, a guy that was 2024 all-heart running back, 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, averaged over 100 per game, added 13 catches for 100 yards through the air. Tiny but mighty, 5'7", but this guy is deceptively strong, slippery, agile, the type of dude that, again, when you pull up the tape, what I see right away, he makes up his mind, he puts his head down. To me, that's very important, especially a guy like him, to have a decisive runner in the backfield that pairs well with some of the gap scheme concepts we're seeing here from the Spartans. A lot of that maybe GT, you see the guard and tackle pulling, some different power inside gaps, A-gap type concepts. Offensively, the feature on a squad that has really been defensively led throughout recent history, it means he's going to be the focal point of just about every scouting report this fall. And to me, he's going to get to test himself this fall against some top caliber defenses and teams. Grandview, Benedictine, Mid-American Nazarene, Baker, among others on this schedule for Missouri Baptist. For a guy like this that is really at the top of his craft inside of the conference and the country, what better way to go out and prove it than to do it against top-level competition week in and week out? You see the breakaway speed right there and just chunk yardage from this guy. And something that I looked at, you talk about those top opponents. For him, all the ranked opponents last year held him to around 80 yards or less with at most one score. For me, that has to be a point of emphasis for this squad and, of course, for Leonel, that how does he show up in the big games this year? When your team needs the score to get back in the game, maybe take the lead late, how do you show up and make those big-time plays? He was limited to short yardage in a lot of those situations and didn't really get those big chunk plays that we see at the beginning of the highlight tape. I don't know. I'm not the X's and O's guy or the scheme guy to make it happen. That, to me, is the point of emphasis for Leonel Banks from Missouri Baptist, the offensive scheme in general. How do you get him involved? How do you get him explosive in the big-time contests where you need him most? That feels like the biggest stepping stone improvement from 2024.
For sure. And I think, too, there's something to be said for last year being kind of his first year in the fire, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Where he got most of his reps, getting a lot of that experience. I think being a smaller guy in this case for him helps, because you talk about his skills as a running back, how he's able to make a decision and go. He's so slippery, like you mentioned, that once he goes, he kind of just slithers his way through a defense. He's always getting through to the second level. He's always finding the tiniest of gaps and just hitting the hole and going. I think that's that's really crucial to his game. And I'm really excited to see, especially with this Missouri Baptist team, like you mentioned, the top dogs in the conference, the Benedictines, the Mid-American Nazarenes, the Bakers.
Yep.
Again, another case of teams who have question marks. Definitely a chance for Missouri Baptist off the back of Banks to get something done this year. I'm really excited to see him go at it. I think going into his senior year, it's gonna be good stuff from him.
Yeah, and he can bounce it outside, but again, like at 5'7", and a dude that doesn't have the biggest stature in terms of the prototypical running back at the college level, he's not afraid to keep it between the tackles. I mean, a little cut back there, and you can bounce it outside the backer. He has the speed to do that in space, but he's not afraid to be an A-gap or B-gap type runner and go up against a Mike backer as opposed to a slot defender, a corner, or a safety coming down. By the way, he can make every single one of those guys miss, but that to me is the most impressive part about his game, is that even maybe where his size might limit other people, he is incredibly multifaceted.
Absolutely. I think too, that's a good transition. A guy like Banks, talking about another undersized dude that's also slippery, but also is deceivingly strong. Somebody like Keegan LaBelle from Marion, also going into his senior season. I mean, we have to remember the 4-touchdown game from the other season, right?
Yep.
Like just an absolute monster for Marion, a traditionally very good Marion team, but a guy at 5'7", 5'8", who's a two-time All-American, once as an honorable mention, once as a second teamer, I believe, and also a two-time all-conference guy for the mid-states. It is absolutely a good situation for him going into his senior year. This is another case of a main feature guy being on a defensive-led team. Quarterback-wise, you're still going to be looking for your guy there. But the chips are all in your favor. You have the Cards as this Marion team, kind of the top dog in your prospective area, in your prospective conference. Keegan LaBelle is in a really good spot, especially with how many O-linemen these guys return. Just producing all conference guys across the board on both sides of the ball. Like I said, there's going to be some gaps on offense to fill, but Marion's a reload team. Not necessarily a rebuild. And I think Keegan LaBelle is going to be the feature guy for this team. He'll probably be the reason they make a run in the playoff, because he is going to be so good down the stretch for them. Another dependable guy, another guy that's not afraid to hit for his size, a guy that will get you the yards that you need. I think it's going to be another great season for him.
Love that. And this has been an offense and a unit in general that has benefited from the other side of the ball. The defense has been one of the best in taking the ball away from opposing offenses. I had the chance to have Dwight Lewis, one of the former DBs, making the jump up to freaking Mississippi State on the show recently. He was a guy that, we've been a part of following this team and that defense for a long time. Ball hawks all across the defensive backfield for this Marion squad. What does it look like now that some of them have moved on, transferred up, graduated, or otherwise? The offense is still going to be obviously potent when you have a guy like this in the offensive backfield, but you might get a few less opportunities. When you don't have, not to say they won't be able to replicate that in the defensive side of things, but when you don't have the same amount and same volume of opportunities to go and, get these chunk plays that we see in the video or other things like that, how do they take advantage of that and make the most of maybe every single drive this season? Just a challenge kind of for them moving forward. And then to close things off here, Indiana Wesleyan feels like they're a part of almost every conversation we have on this program, and for good reason. You just can't stay away from the Wildcats. And the guy we're talking about today from them would be Ryan Whitwell from, of course, Indiana Wesleyan, 2024 All MSFA first team of 2024, newcomer of the year, a guy that loves combat sports, Matt, and Barry Sanders. I'll take him on my roster tomorrow. He was once asked what he'd be doing if not for football. He said MMA. Yeah. And you know what? At 6 foot, 210 pounds, I believe him.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
I absolutely believe
monster.
I just love that I found that tidbit on him. And, for any opposing linebacker, defensive back, or otherwise, do your homework on this guy before you go meet him on the gridiron here. The UND transfer from GLVC, the Division II. He's, to me, a young guy that didn't get his chance early at UND. Was redshirted with the Greyhounds. Had a ton of great practice tape that I saw on Twitter when I was going through and trying to do some research. Felt like he believed he was ready to go now. Maybe didn't get that chance right away at UND. That's very common for a lot of Division II and even any level of college institution, man. You come in as a freshman, there's a very small chance you're going to be the guy right away. I think he believed, he knew that he could be that guy, and he had the production ready to go. Enters the portal. It certainly has worked out for him over at Indiana Wesleyan. The second back, and what really you kind of put it as a two-back attack. Roosevelt Gage, the other I guess, head of this attack, each with 1,000 yards a year ago. And he's going to have to step into a leadership role, especially all-conference quarterback Kyle Antoine is gone out of the picture. So the other part of that offensive backfield needs to step up, be a bigger part of that. Again, we go back to the biggest friend of any type of newer quarterback, quote-unquote, is a legit dog standing next to you at the running back spot.
Absolutely. And as a young guy, you mentioned that leadership role. It's going to happen for him. And it seems like he's ready for it, especially with his mentality coming out of UND, feeling like he needed that opportunity that Indiana Wesleyan provided him. I mean, you saw it as a freshman playing with a junior running back in Roosevelt Gage, who's no longer with the program. Absolutely a guy who's going to have to step into that role. But I think he's ready for it. I think especially being back two and you're still rushing for 1,000 yards, earning first team all conference honors, definitely somebody who can push that 1,500 plus mark, depending on how you build the offense around him. And I think
now we're talking like Barry here. Now we're talking like Barry.
Hey, look, if he's the Barry Sanders guy, I'll make the Barry Sanders comp. I have no problem with that.
And I don't know if he gets to claim Barry, man. He's 6 foot 210. I don't know if he gets to claim Barry at 6 foot, but that aside, I enjoyed doing my homework on him, and it's fun to hear a positive transfer portal story because I see all the ridiculous numbers and the horror stories of how many guys obviously get in and never find a home. For him to have that seemingly from the outside seamless transition and to get in there and make an impact right away is awesome. But close this thing out. Tell me about Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan Clay from Ottawa of Kansas. I think a guy you talk about the portal who might have had a bit of a different experience out of the gate. A guy who was a two-time LGLVC guy at William Jewell, two-time all-conference, I should say, guy at William Jewell, was there for 2 years, hit the portal, went to Emporia State, was only there for a season, and now finds himself in Ottawa, Kansas, a spot where this team didn't do so hot last year. They went 1-10, but don't let that deceive you. Metrics actually had this team as a top half in the country defense. And they had like double-digit all-conference guys, which for a one-win team is kind of absurd. Jordan Clay,
unheard
obviously.
of. I did not know that. That's ridiculous.
First team all-conference running back on a one-win team. I think overall, this team is one to watch because I feel like that record did not tell the story for them last season at all. And I feel like Jordan Clay, kind of in the same breath as a first-team all-conference guy, is still flying under the radar. He is absolutely fantastic. You look at his tape, he's a super efficient one-cut back. He finds his hole, reads the zone, and then goes. Being able to get north-south right away was huge for them. He had almost 700 yards rushing last year for the Braves. I think a guy that is really going to come out of nowhere for a lot of people. And I'm excited to be one of the people who said I was on the bandwagon ahead of time. I think they have a very
I like that.
Yeah, they have a very fun season ahead of them, especially in a very cluttered KCAC Bissell division that is really up for grabs. I'm curious to see how far Jordan Clay can take this team, and I think they'll do a lot better than people are assuming.
Yeah, there ain't much room to go the other direction, so you would hope that, things are trending north down there for the Braves. Some of the coolest uniforms in NAIA football, I will say as well. Helmets are sweet. They have like the arrow that comes down the front, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly. So
also an NAIA women's flag football powerhouse. They're like 3 or 4 time national defending champions. Yep.
Hey, okay.
Mm-hmm. Football's kind of their thing, man. So I think the men's team will get it turned around here. They'll get back to winning ways.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that, Matt. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate the insight. Football is incredibly close. Feels like teams are starting camp as early as like next week, man.
Dude, it's sneaking up on us, especially as an SID. It is sneaking up on me.
Yeah, man. And like I was saying before, like we need to. My number one goal and mission is. It sounds incredibly crazy, but to meet you in person and get you behind the desk this year would be my ultimate dream. Make a trip out there to one of the Dakotas and cover some ball, dude. But either way, pumped to have you along for the ride, and I think this is going to be a really fun season. But until then, we talk stats and previews and whatever else. Not much longer.
Yeah, I know. It'll be a good season.